I'm welcoming viewers around the world, viewers in Massachusetts, viewers all over the social media. My name is Ronald and I'm hosting the show called Dialogue with the Candidate. Dialogue with the Candidate is a show in which we invite candidates to come and they can share the political agenda, their plan, and how they gonna improve people's life. So we are glad today for this segment to have with us Maria Esdale Farrell. She's running for City Council for District 5 in Boston, and District 5 covers Mattapan, Roslindale, and Hyde Park. Welcome, Maria.
Good morning. Thank you.
Good morning. And thank you for coming to the show, and we are very glad you accepting our invitation. So, Maria, you decided to go for City Council at large, City Council for Boston.
Yes.
And it's your first time.
Yes, it is.
Running. And why you decide to go for City Council?
I've answered this question so many times, and every time I answer it, it's something I have to pause. I always have been very involved in my community. I'm very excited to build a sense of community where I live. I've lived in my home for almost 50 years, and through all the work I've done in my community as a volunteer, really, and it was so successful and it was so incredibly rewarding that I got offered a job in Boston City Council working for the current councilor as an education advisor. And so it was a different perspective, a different lens of how I could help on another level. I learned a lot over the last 6 years. And when the councilor wasn't going to run for re-election, I first thought, well, how am I going to continue to do the great work that I'm doing? And so I started to look at the other councilors that were running and thought maybe that's something I could offer my services. And so as I'm in the office for almost 6 years, and I know what it takes to run that office, I was looking for very specific characteristics, and I just didn't see what I wanted in a city councilor and the candidates that presented. And so we kept looking and hoping, and I thought, well, I don't have to do this too. You know, I do a lot of things. I'm sure there's going to be some out there. I'll just be patient. I'll wait. And then like this sense of urgency and this desire started just building inside when I realized, you know, I think I owe it to my community to give them what I have. Boston's in such an incredible growth. So much change is happening. A lot of people aren't happy, and I'm worried. And I love Boston. I love my community, and so I kind of felt a sense of obligation and a passion and drive to say, you know what, I'm going to give this everything I've got. Because I've always been that kind of person. I don't complain when I see things not running properly or the way I think they should be running. I get involved and I help out and I do whatever I can to make it better. And so this was, you know, an incredible opportunity that presented itself to me. And I said, well, I'm going to give it everything I have, and we'll see what happens. So I'm so excited that I've made it here. I never thought I'd be in this seat. I never thought I'd be running for city council. And I always loved participating. I love helping people. I love being part of the community. Mm-hmm. This is just very unique and different.
Okay, thank you for the answer.
Thanks.
And it shows that, you know, every candidate, I see like the passion, the way they want to improve people's life in terms of when they are either elected or running for office. So, Maria, what are the issues like people in, you know,
our district?
Yeah, your district.
Yeah, it's interesting. It changes quickly. You know, politics have a life of its own, and so the issues I believe that started when I announced in April have grown immensely to this day. So right now, I think the biggest issue facing our district is development. You know, either overdevelopment or not affordable housing. People can't afford to live in the city anymore. They're worried about the characteristics of their neighborhoods changing. So that's been like the number one thing that's been happening as we're, you know, in a national housing crisis. Mm-hmm. And Boston's going through so much growth. District 5 has been some people will say it's been very, very protected. Okay. And so there hasn't been a lot of growth activity there. And it's kind of like the last spot that hasn't had that. And they're not ready for it. So it's, you know, that's the number one thing. I kind of feel I have a sense of an obligation to protect my community, speak for my community and make sure that someone's taking care of it, kind of like a mom.
Okay.
You know, it's the mom in you, in me, that is like, wait a minute, like moms fight hard, moms advocate, moms protect, and moms give tough love. You know, so I feel like my community needs that.
Okay. So as you mentioned about affordable, housing.
Yes.
How do you plan, like, to tackle,
those issues?
This issue in terms of, I don't know if you have some strategic plan, to address that. I know it's tough.
It is.
But do you have, like, some plan that is probably laid out?
Well, I think the first thing I'm looking at is the development.
Okay.
So we want to make sure that any development that comes into the district benefits the community. So we want to make sure it has stronger benefits than a detriment, a burden. So it has to be smart, it has to be strategic, and it has to make sense. So that's the first thing I want to do as we do that. I want to make sure it doesn't change the characteristics of our neighborhood, that it's in areas that make sense. We have a lot of transit-oriented housing, which makes a lot of sense. We do need a little more density. I know that's people are nervous about that. I do see that our business districts are struggling, and they don't have the same volume that we used to have as foot traffic or people coming into the community. A lot of people leave the community to go to get the things they want. So like everything, it all kind of comes back together. So if we had a thriving business district that people were visiting, it would be a happier place to live. It would be more economically affordable. Like it would just help thrive the community, and we need people to be there to do that. But we want to make sure the housing we build is housing we can afford. And so some of the things we talk about is just the balance. So we've had all these discussions on, do we raise the index? Do we do 1/3% affordable? A lot of my candidates that were running against me, my opponents, had felt that was the best solution. I didn't think that was the best solution because I don't think it's as balanced as we need in a society. So even though mathematically it's a nice balanced equation, it doesn't help the growth of the community. So we need to make sure we do have to have market housing because they have expendable income. They are only working one job. They can help volunteer, give back to the community, spend in the community. So we need that. There's an absolute need for that. But we also need to make sure we're taking care of workforce housing. I think I'd love to work towards change. The AMI needs to change. It can't be based on that. So we're doing a lot of research recently on like what can we really do in Boston, because we have so many Boston residents who have to work for the city and can't afford to stay there. So that's a problem. And then we have other families that just have not had the opportunity for success. For whatever reason, there's a lot of reasons that happens. We know sometimes it's cultural, sometimes it's just social economic reasons, not having the same opportunities as others to succeed. So a lot of times it comes back to like, how do we stop the bleed? Sometimes just putting a blanket cause and putting up housing doesn't help the cause. We don't want to put people in a perpetual state where they have to always pay rent. We'd love to provide ownership. We want people to succeed. People come to America for the dream, and I don't want to change what that dream is. So I'd like to find ways to make sure when we're talking about educating, education's a big piece of why I'm running. It's been the biggest thing that I've been working on my whole life, because as a mom, you realize everything comes back to education.
Yeah, as you mentioned about education, that would be my next issue to talk about. In one of the debates you had before September 24th, there were a question about elected school committee.
Yes.
So is it something you're still opposing to, or?
I just don't think
What is your take on
I don't think it's the best idea.
Okay.
We had once upon a time, we had an elected school committee and it didn't work well, which is why we changed it. I'm open to anything we can do to make sure the voice is heard, but I really don't think that's, sometimes it's just really understanding how the system works. I've had talked about a hybrid community, committee where maybe there is a mix of both. Elected and appointed. So I'm always open for discussion on how we can improve on anything, and that's everything I do. It's like, how do we make it better? How do we make it better? So I think one of the things we can do as a city councilor, I have a lot of knowledge in the Boston Public Schools, how our budget works, how our weighted student formula works, like how the whole machine turns. A lot of people don't have that knowledge, and so part of me thinks that in years past, we rely on people to give us our information. It's a lot to understand. It's a third of our city's budget. It's one of the biggest departments that we run. So it's tricky. And I think Councillor Sabi George has been tackling it. She understands it. I'm hoping to be able to join her in that. And even since I've been there, just helping to educate exactly how that budget looks. Sometimes I think we dehumanize everything, and it comes down to numbers, and because we're busy and we're efficient and we do reports and we look at things in a numbers standpoint, and I think sometimes we forget about the human factor, and we really have to see what that means. So I want to advocate, and I understand that because I've been advocating. It's why I helped refound the Citywide Parent Council, to really leverage the opportunities. But we've had some incredible success. I think our new superintendent is going to be very receptive. She understands. I think she's like really quickly understanding the challenges we face. It's difficult when we keep changing leadership, because it becomes a hiccup in the whole system and everything kind of comes to a halt. So we'd love to see some consistency with that, make sure that the staff stays on in some areas, so things that we decide that we're going to do actually get rolled out. We have an incredible team, I think, working hard, and they're very aware of the issues that we face, and we're trying to find solutions to it. I'm very hopeful. There was a time I wasn't, and I felt that, a lot of times government does things to us and not for us, and I wanted to change that. So I started to change that in the schools, and it was very successful. I'm very pleased with my work. My children have reaped the benefits of that. Friends and family have seen the benefits of that. I want to continue to do that, and I'm hoping that it spreads, and I really have hope that, if I'm elected, it will be the majority woman council.
Okay.
I believe women lead differently. They think differently. It's a very holistic approach, and I think even if we all come from different backgrounds and we have different ideologies, I think we work well together because we like to find results. And I think we'll be able to change the way Boston does politics and the way we govern our city with a majority women board, and I'm hoping to be part of that. I think we'll see a lot of great change happening. So yes, I'm open to discussion, but I don't think off the top, I would say I'm not supportive. I have not been supportive of full elected. A lot of times people in elected school committees, it's a stepping stone on to political office. So sometimes people lose their focus. They're not always educators. They're not people who have the knowledge and the background to be in that position. It can be like a popularity contest. And that's not what we want. We want people on that board that are very understanding, thoughtful, knowledgeable. And it's not, it works for a reason. I would love to see student voice a little bit more, and we talked about that, and that's been very controversial. We do have BSAC, and we have a student representative that doesn't allow the voting privilege. And I came from a standpoint in the beginning where I really understood that. And lately, talking to my children, who I'm always trying to encourage to be advocates in their schools and government counsel in their schools when they're very frustrated and upset. And I said, you can make the change. So my son said to me the other day, well, Mom, I don't see that you're supporting a vote from the students on that council. And I was like, well, Martin, you're young and you have a lot to learn, and I'm not sure we're ready for that. And he says, well, Mom, if you said for yourself, if you want me to be a leader of change, then why is my time not valuable? So I go to a meeting and give up my time and give everything I have just to be heard, but it doesn't count? What kind of message is that? And I was like, oh, yeah, you're right. So it did make me rethink that,
That's a smart point.
It is.
So all the viewers, I would like to remind you, you are still listening to Dialogue with the Candidate at MCTV, which is Multicultural Television Network. And through the dialogue, we have candidates to come here to our platform, and they can share the political agenda, their plan, and the public themselves, they can make informed decision when they go to the poll. So today we have with us Maria Esdale Farrell. She's running for City Council for District 5 in Boston. So we're going to continue with the dialogue with Maria. So Maria, yes. I saw in your website, you talk about stronger community.
Yes.
So I know it's like, can you define that?
Of course. So, I'm excited too. It's the main reason I'm running.
Okay.
So my entire life I've been trying to build what I perceive to be a strong community. And a strong community is a place that has a strong business district, members in the community feel close to each other, connected, working towards common goals, happy where they live, wonderful interactions. So growing up in Hyde Park, I feel it's always lacked a little bit of cohesiveness. Very separated by neighborhoods. We have wonderful groups that do wonderful work independently, and we haven't ever come together to really make the change I think we need. Roslindale has reorganized some of their leadership, and we have an incredible system in Roslindale with our businesses, engagement. The restaurants are booming. They're really doing well in Roslindale. Mattapan also struggles like Hyde Park. We're very similar. Hyde Park and Mattapan are a little more similar than Roslindale. And the constituent bases too. So I wanted to, as I did in the schools. So we find in schools, what makes schools most successful is family engagement. And when there's not family engagement, you wonder why. And so the things that I've discovered is the number one reason that families don't come to their schools and become engaged is there's language barriers, there is cultural differences, they're working too many jobs and just can't get there. It's usually not because they don't care, right? So it was being strategic in schools on how do we make our schools successful, to be higher performing schools, to have the resources they need. It all came down to family engagement, because life all comes down to the basic unit of the family. And whatever family, whatever you define that to be. You know, it doesn't have to be mom, dad, and child. We have very unique, we have grandparents raising children, we have single moms, we have single dads. So whatever you define your family to be. But we all know as we're nurturing children, they need to be nurtured to grow. Okay. And so we want to be able to do that, not just in our schools, but in our community. So when we talk about violence in Mattapan, like how are ways we affect that? It isn't just by placing more police officers, which can be helpful, but it comes back to it takes a village. So we want to make sure that we're utilizing our schools, our community centers, building partnerships within our districts, within our business centers, really connecting people to one another, helping to blend our cultural differences to becoming one community, expanding what community means, because it doesn't have to be defined by, a certain group, a certain geographical area. I want to work really hard to be out in my district to bring, our Haitian community is incredibly strong in Hyde Park and Mattapan particularly. Wonderful leaders, very faith-based. And education is a huge importance. And they're frustrated as well with the system and not finding what they think that we should be there. And they're absolutely right. But I want to bring them into a larger community set of leadership to make sure they're advocating as well. I think we do better if we come together. I think people have more in common than we have them divide us. So it's very important that you have the people skills to be able to connect, the outreach, empower others when you lift everybody up. So it's not about my agenda or what I want, it's what I'm going to do to work in the community to bring other groups together, other leaders, encourage people to get involved. And that's how we've built every success I've had, is because we expand our net of people involvement. And so people feel, when you feel connected, when you feel supported, when you feel that you matter, that your voice is heard, you become vested in your community, you care, and it spreads, it grows organically. It's a beautiful thing. Next thing you know, we're coming together to make sure our parks are clean. We're making sure all the children are taken care of. We're looking out for one another again. I think life got so complicated and hard in our cities, and everybody kind of retreated to be protective, putting up walls, sort of. And I think we need to change that and come together.
As you mentioned about the park cleanliness, is there an issue in terms of littering and
yes,
in the district?
It is, and it's probably the most frustrating. I think the things, I've knocked almost 7,000 doors, and I've worked in the office for 5.5 years. So we have people who call our office every day, and I handle constituent calls. And then I'm personally knocking on doors for people I've never met, people who don't come to community meetings, because we go to those too. And the biggest concerns I'm hearing in the community are traffic. People are either going too fast or too slow. So we're speeding down streets and people are afraid, or we're stuck in traffic and can't get through. And then it's the development. Some of the problems with that is more that, there's a family that wants to build a deck on their yard, or expand their driveway. And it might take 2 years to get that done, but the house next door to them is going to be knocked down and put up 12 units overnight. So there's that frustration. Or large apartment buildings, Article 80 size buildings are being built, and they feel they don't have community say, or they don't want it. They're afraid of the impact on the community and the neighbors. And sometimes that's not heard, or they feel that their voice isn't being heard. So when we talk about development, even though everybody wants Boston to be affordable so that they can live here, so that children can live here, seniors, we worry about our seniors who usually become on a fixed income at some point. We don't have quality housing, enough quality housing, so people who've lived in this community forever want to stay here. You know, my grandmother herself, she moved out of the district. She grew up in the city, and well, she didn't grow up in the city. She moved. She's not from this country, but when they moved into Dorchester, and then when she had to be in housing, and we couldn't find housing, quality housing for her, affordable housing for her, and it was really sad for her to move out. You love the public transportation. You get used to people, and we want to be able to perpetuate that and be able to have that. We have families, we have seniors that just need housing, and then we have seniors who own their homes and are restricted because they own something and they don't qualify for housing. So we have to be careful with that. Sometimes they're just tired. Their kids have moved away, or they don't have children. It's a lot of work to keep up a home, and they want to stay. So we want to make sure we have quality housing for our seniors, our veterans, that we're taking care of everybody. So not just those who haven't had opportunity, but those who've contributed to society and have been successful and to some degree. I feel like sometimes the people who work the hardest get the least reward. And I feel like government kind of works that way, and it forces people to do things that may not be up on the level because it's easier. Businesses under the table, people always trying to find a way to survive because it's just so expensive. It's hard to have small business. You pay a lot of money. The costs are high. We're all just trying to make it. We all work hard every day to pay our bills and live, take care of our families. And so my vision as a counselor is more that, if a district, it's different. When you're a district counselor, at large, you're taking care of citywide issues. Okay. And you have a responsibility there. And obviously we all need to work together on that. But mainly the district role is to make sure that your daily life is functioning so well that you can continue to be successful, because I'm going to take care of all the little things, the things that you don't see happening. Make sure you're getting your basic city services. Make sure when you apply for school, you should have 3 choices. And you should pretty much have an 80% guarantee that you're going to one of those schools, not apply to 10 schools and then not get anything, and then be shipped across the city with your 4-year-old who's never been on a bus before. I feel like we're not doing things to help families be happy and successful. I'd like to change and make sure that we have more kind of customer service base, if serving people.
So, Maria, one thing I'd like to say, congratulations, because
thank you.
It's the first time you say you're running
Yes.
for office, and you already passed the first test, which was September 24th.
Yes.
And now you and your opponent, you are 2 people running for the seat for City Council for District 5.
Yeah.
So we are at the end of the show, Dialogue with the Candidate. And I do that with all the candidates. It's give you the opportunity to make the case for the viewer of MCTV and viewers in Massachusetts, viewers especially in your district that you're running for, to make your case why they should vote for you.
Okay. Well, they should vote for me because of my passion and my hard work. I'm more committed than anybody else. I've lived in the community for 50 years. I understand the struggles of families who just try to raise a family in the community. I work 3 jobs to stay here, so I understand how hard it is. I'm a first generation American, and so I understand the struggles of our other friends who've just come here, not having the resources or feeling connected to services in the community. I know how to help and make that happen. I know how to help bring older generations of Bostonians to movement and to some change, which is really difficult for people when they're happy and they don't like change and they're resistant to it. We do need to make sure that we're moving in a positive direction for all of us, so our children have a wonderful place to live. We want to make sure, I know I can do that as a mom of 6 children who are in the Boston school system. I understand families. I understand the struggles, and I know how to make things happen.
We are now at the closing of the show, and it was glad to have Maria Esdale Farrell, who's running for City Council for District 5 in Boston. And the election gonna be on November 5th. So she make her case to you viewers, and you will decide at the poll. So my name is Ronald Bernard, and I am the host for the show called Dialogue with the Candidate. I hope we will see you for the next show.